I need to increase security on my SaaS. I have a $24 budget per month. Let's look at what's available on the market and how I can do it. First, let's introduce the two types of users. First one is the classic user. He can access the backend and get his data from the database. Second is the administrator or the developer, in this case, which is me. And I'm able to manage the cluster, all the different services and configurations, but I and only I need to access it. Before showing you the infrastructure, I needed to make sure that it will work on a smaller VM. So hosting the monitoring will not hog all the resources of the VM. So I've done that. I've created 2 vCPU and 4 gigs of RAM virtual machine, which I've installed Rocky Linux on it and bootstrapped a cluster and installed the monitoring on it. And other clusters send metrics to this monitoring instance. So it's working great. I'm going to do it into Hetzner Cloud. So the steps to do it on Hetzner will be first create one VM for the production cluster, one for the monitoring, and one for the remote access. One load balancer for redirecting public traffic, and bootstrapping all the clusters and installing the tools. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to show you how I do it. Let's get on the computer and look at the diagram. I'm going to start by the existing architecture. So you have your user, which goes through a load balancer, and then it's going into AWS onto the backend, which is an ECS cluster, and will get his data from the document DB. So we'll need to migrate this into a more cloud agnostic configuration and migrate to Hetzner to be cheaper. Now I'm in the Hetzner console, and I've created a few things, which is 2 firewall rules and 2 networks for my virtual machine and my load balancer. I'm going to continue creating now servers and the load balancer and configuring everything. In AWS, I also didn't have, as an administrator, access to the database without some tricky setup, which is not very great. So when I go into Hetzner, I have 2 users, which is first end users and second an admin user. So the end user, as before, goes through the load balancer inside the public network that will forward the request into the production cluster in the private network. And for administrators, we go through a remote access cluster which hosts a teleport, which gives us access to the monitoring and the production cluster. So it's a pretty secure but yet efficient setup, because it's only costing 3 small VMs, which cost around €5 per month. So that's pretty neat. The first step is to create new firewall rules so I can configure my VM on port 22 for SSH and on 6443 for Kubernetes. So I've done that, and the cluster is running fine. I'm now going to deploy the Atomic Blend stack and update the README. So I just configured the first virtual machines. I've allowed myself through the firewall for setup, but this rule will disappear once we're in production mode. I'm gonna now deploy the Atomic Blend stack on the virtual machine, then all the tooling necessary. And I'll explain to you when it's done, how it's looking like, and if the plan has worked or not. I'm still taking a bit of time to polish the script, so add the missing arguments and make sure it works as expected, but it seems to work fine, so I'm going to continue working on it. But it's stuff like this, like passing arguments like an SSH key via CLI or stuff like that. So today didn't go as planned. Let me explain you why. I just managed to install and migrate the data into the Hetzner Production Cloud. It's good, but it's taken me a bit longer than I expected because I needed to edit the script to make them work better and be better for the long use. So that's done. Tomorrow I'll have to migrate the DNS to the new servers and install the monitoring and all the rest of the tools. So I'm making progress, but it's a bit longer. See you tomorrow.